Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this week's Upsolution Facebook Live interview. And we have a real treat this week. So we've talked a lot about both the crisis and the challenge we're currently going through right now. So obviously the impact of the global pandemic on business has been a huge interruption. The crisis has literally interrupted pretty much all patterns, whether your business is expanding and you still have to shift how you deliver or how you interact in your audience, or your business had complete shutdown and you have to literally pivot in order to keep your doors open and your team engaged. So we've just gone through this huge crisis. And of course, the flip of that, it's probably the biggest opportunity of our lifetime to position ourselves, reposition based on what the market needs are, who you deliver value for, and be leaders in our community coming out of this. But it's times of crisis historically have created the leaders of the next stage, and but it's following different rules. So it's really thinking from a completely different framework about your business, about what's next, and re-looking at what we consider how we operate and how we do business. So to that end, I'm delighted to have Marisha Tartsky. Am I saying that correctly, Marisha?
Bang on.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank goodness. I was worried about stumbling. So Marisha is, she's a business coach and she's got a history of producing incredible results with her clients, but she's also a creativity and innovation facilitator. So specifically, I asked Marisha to be on this week's Facebook Live because she has this real talent to bring into tapping into your own creativity. And one of the challenges is that some people think they're very creative and some people think they're not. And actually, Marisha's going to talk about how we all have creativity. Interesting, I was on a Genius Network meetup last night, and somebody was saying, I think it was Jeff Madoff has just come out with this new book on creative business, creating a creative business. Brilliant book. And he talked about the research. There's actually no research that we're left brain or right brain.
Yeah.
That we all have components of both. And so we pigeonholed ourselves to think that we're analytical or we're creative. And the reality is we have different methods of creativity. So Marisha, give a little bit of background on who you are, and let's start talking about, because this is, I think harnessing our own creativity is one of the paths out of the crisis into creating leadership into the next stage.
Patty, thank you so much for having me here with you. It is great to be with you and all of the people in this Facebook Live session. And my background, very briefly, graduated from business school, Ivy Business School down in Western. It's sort of a traditional approach to thinking about business, especially at that time in the 90s, and went into consumer packaged goods, which I thought was a creative space to be in. However, I learned how linear marketing could be back in the 90s. And as I went through it, I just found it a bit stifling being in that realm of marketing, and ended up leaving Canada for a year and moving to France. And that's sort of where my entrepreneurial spirit continued to be watered and flourish. So when I came back to Canada, I was determined I wasn't going to join a large corporate. And I ended up becoming the first woman in marketing at Lavalife, or what emerged as Lavalife, which was at the time a really big Canadian success story. And that was where I transitioned from really focusing on understanding consumer behaviors to sell them things like in the past, like cat food, dog food, chocolate bars, to being focused on human performance and engagement. And in those days, it was still kind of new. Like we were just engaging in these conversations. And I got an incredible role at Lavalife because we started to talk about something called the inside brand. It's like, how is your team emanating and being the brand? And that was, again, a new conversation. So we transitioned from being Interactive Media Group to Lavalife, and we wanted all of our teams across North America to really embed the brand in who they were and find your natural personality in that. And I got to lead that. So I discovered I loved that part. I love coaching. I wasn't actually any kind of a certified coach at the time, but that's where I ended up being. Fast forward, I ended up leaving Lava Life and starting my own company, Velocity Partnership. And then in 2006, I began a master's in creativity and change leadership. And everything just came together, converged to this, oh, I know what I love to do. It's really to support people in understanding your creative essence, something you referred to earlier, like their unique capabilities, and to bring that forward. And entrepreneurs just sort of channel themselves that way, although they may not realize it. And we have a reputation as being creative as entrepreneurs. And I think there's a time where entrepreneurs might hit the glass ceiling of their creativity unless they really understand how they are creative. So in a nutshell, that's my work. I work corporately, also doing the same kind of work as large corporations are trying to become more entrepreneurial and more creative. But I have a secret love. Don't tell all my corporate clients, really working with my entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. Well, they're one of the things that I've always said about why I work with entrepreneurs and their teams is they're all on the court of life,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
There's immediate response. This works, this doesn't work. They're out there taking risks or testing things out.
Sure.
There's no safe zone because you're stagnant and you're decreasing if you're playing in a safe zone. So
Absolutely. And you said something earlier I really want to tap on because I'm going to give you my opinion right away. I believe everybody's creative.
love it.
We are born creative. You see it in your kids. And, there's a lot of conversation going on around systems and systemic things that we are identifying in how we live. And I will say there has been a systemic push down of our innate and natural creativity.
Mhm.
And the systems around us have stopped us from being creative. So entrepreneurs are working against that force often in the cities, the environments, the countries we work in to get their creative ideas out there. And I think the world has caught on. It isn't catching on. It's caught on to why can be such a glorious position to be in an entrepreneurship role.
Perfect. So, you're talking right now to entrepreneurs, maybe some key team members. What's the first step? Where should they start?
Well, I'm a big believer in knowing thyself as a way to then be able to have that self-awareness to develop and build others. And so with that, and also your customers, I think if you are really connected and the message of creativity resonates for you, and I imagine it does for most of your entrepreneurial clients and people watching today, you understand your own creative process. So in creativity, it's actually a 4-step process. And as I go through this, listen for yourself, because you're probably going to hear where you have a creative process that mirrors this, and you may never have even known it. There are 4 stages. One is clarifying. You have to know what problem you're solving for. What happens a lot is we solve for the wrong problems because we don't spend enough time clarifying the right problem to solve for. So the adage I have is companies spend a lot of time solving the wrong problem really, really well.
And Marisha, can you give an example of that? Because I think this is a really, really
Yeah.
important point. And, for example, right now, I can see entrepreneurs are just trying to keep their doors open and trying to, how can they bring more customers back or how can they make more sales?
Yes.
And I think that's the wrong problem. So can you dig a little bit more into that?
Yeah, absolutely, Patty. It's a great question. We really have to, like, entrepreneurs have a lot of forward momentum energy. And this is why clarifying can be so hard for all of us, myself included, because you got to slow yourself down to assess. And it can feel almost like for an entrepreneur, you're in quicksand because you've got to ask the right questions, or you've got to be asking a lot of questions and be open to hearing responses that you may not like. So with you saying, we might be going after clients, but what if that's actually not what we need in our business? So the back to the reflection is being able to really take a look at your landscape and going, am I even solving problems for the right customer right now?
Mm-hmm.
Is my offering the right offering now? As opposed to trying to figure out how to pivot with your offering, might your offering have to shift?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to be, and you want to do this in a space where you feel safe to ask all the hard questions of your business right now. Because like you said, this is an incredible time. It will be an incredible time if you don't get attached to doing things the way you've done in the past and trying to potentially take that mold and figure out how to just do it online. That may not be your solution.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to spend time understanding and figuring that out. And some of that's connected back to what your value proposition was in the past and where it might need to evolve. And I'm going a little further into the process here, but so it's really spending time. And so where I see that is, for example, I also work with a lot of interior designers, and they thought the problem to solve, as I said, was to go online.
Mm-hmm.
The time they would have pivoted their business to go online, it would be too late now to focus on the things that really matter, because already they're going to be allowed to go and physically distance with their clients. It's an easy business to go back and be in person with because it's one-on-one. It's not in large groups. So if they would have spent all their money trying to get online when it really doesn't light them up and it's not exciting for them and it's not their passion, it would have been a waste of money. Because as we know, as entrepreneurs, if you're working on something that doesn't give you any energy and it doesn't light you up, you're going to run out of steam to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
So
a great example.
That's the clarifying stage. Does that maps on?
Yep. And I think it's really important. I appreciate you really emphasizing that, because I think you said something that's really important, Marisha, and that is that one of the dangers right now for entrepreneurs is to not break up assumptions of how they operated successfully in the past.
Mm-hmm.
All patterns are interrupted within a major crisis. All patterns, which means all assumptions. You really have to go right back to, who do you like to work with? What value or solutions do you create, and start to figure out what do you put together from that?
Yes. And Patty, you just said the magic word, assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
They are make or break in so much of what we do, and they will play into every stage of the creative process.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what you think you may need to put some creativity around, you may pivot and go, no, it's actually back here. Mm-hmm. Or, the other thing I'm seeing around the clarifying is that a lot of entrepreneurs have had this idea and suddenly it's relevant now.
Yes.
So that's where the sort of reimagine, reinvent, and reposition
Yes.
where your methodology is so valuable. That's where that might fit in perfectly. And then you want to jump on what you're doing to go in that direction quickly, because velocity will be important, because probably someone else might be moving in that direction too. So getting there first is always, it can be a very good thing.
You say that, and what came to mind was an entrepreneur I was talking to in April, and their business is selling and servicing generators for institutions, hospitals in particular. And one of the things that they had developed in the last couple of years was to be able to leverage their talent, their team, and they had created an app, and they were able to monitor and service largely remotely. But they had incredible pushback, like the people who worked on site at these institutions and hospitals wanted to see a live person. Yeah. All of a sudden, they don't want to see a live person. And this company, now there's a demand for something that they've been trying to push. It felt like push uphill. And now there's a demand for something they've already, and now they're leading their industry.
Awesome. Love it. Love that. And that back to, that's context, right? Mm-hmm. Like the context you're working from, the context is completely shifted. Look at your context to clarify what needs your customers or potential customers have, and be able to get in there and understand and empathize with what they're dealing with. Mm-hmm. That's a part of clarifying.
That's great. So clarifying stage one, what's stage two?
Ideators. Hello, entrepreneurs. You ideators out there, you get all the acclaim. It's the sexy part. However, it really is only about 20 to 25% of your creative process. And you might be driving your employees nuts with all your ideas. And they might be driving you nuts with all their questions to clarify why that's a good idea, right? But ideating is fun. And there is an adage, ideas are a dime a dozen, and sometimes they are. However, It's being able to assess the best ideas. And
Mhm.
also, this is the point where, how do you garner ideas? Like, just because your name's on the door doesn't mean you have the best ideas in your company. And this is where diversity around the table is incredibly important, to bring new ideas in and to seek that diversity, whether it be in socioeconomic thinking styles, et cetera, around the table, to bring that in to see what might be possible.
Mhm.
And to be able to think through things. I will say one other thing too. The creative process is very much about what we call divergent thinking, which is big thinking, which is what ideation is, and convergent thinking. And then that you go and you pick the best bets, or you make a call on what you think might be able to be moved forward. And often what we tend to do, and this is across the board, is that we diverge and converge at the same time.
Yes.
Right. And
Yes.
what you want to strive for in ideation is novelty. And our brains often aren't trained to deal with novelty. And so they'll shut down what they see something as new and novel. And I would say that the disruption of COVID has disrupted how our brains work. So that newness that we've had, like you just described, with the story you just told, like
Mhm.
suddenly some people are really open to newness right now, aren't they? Because
Yes.
like,
Yes.
holy mother,
Yes.
mother of invention is necessity.
Yes, absolutely. And you said a couple things that I think are really, really important. One is the value and importance of leaning into your team.
Yes.
The rule of thumb is, even if you as the entrepreneur at one time did the job that somebody else on your team now does, the person who does the job today, day in, day out, is the expert on that role.
Yes.
They will come up if you engage them and ask them to share improvement ideas, and like the expansion, as well as I think one of the issues I see a lot of times is that people try and come up with the right idea
Yes.
rather than, as you said, the novelty. Really open up. My creative process is, when I'm brainstorming something, I want to have 30 different options, and some of them as off the wall as possible. Because when I have 30 different options up on a whiteboard, all of a sudden some things start clicking.
Absolutely. And you're bang on about that, Patty. And I would say you want to get some wild ideas up there so you don't in any way censor anything. So
Yes.
you will be amazed when you let people say the craziest things. What that ends up doing is, this is the beauty of human being and brains, is that I go, oh yeah, that makes me think of something. How many of you have had what was called the V8 moment, right? Boop. I might be dating myself a little, and then you go, oh, that makes me think of, and suddenly that lateral pivot brings
Mhm.
an idea up that everyone goes, wow. It also frees people up when you say crazy things, because you start
Yes.
to become a little more vulnerable, and vulnerability is a big part of ideation.
Yes, very good. There's a great story, and this is actually from the 80s, early 90s, that Marty Edelson, who was the entrepreneur behind a company called Boardroom Inc. in the States, and he was of the era that he actually worked with Peter Drucker. So Peter Drucker
Mm,
consulted with Boardroom. And one of the comments, they were just finishing a meeting, and casually on his way out the door, Peter Drucker said, Marty, how are your meetings? And he goes, oh, it's just like we go from meeting to meeting to meeting and just don't. He said, well, if you want to improve the quality of your meeting, he actually had two suggestions. One is hold them standing up,
yeah.
because people tend to be more concise. But
Mm-hmm.
the other thing is, he said, ask everyone to come to a meeting with one or two improvement ideas. Simple
Mm,
things,
yeah.
not big, huge things, simple things. It might be, if I move my filing cabinet, and this is dated too, if I moved it from here to
Yeah.
here, I wouldn't have to get out of my chair multiple
Sure.
times, right? But what came out of that, one of the ideas that came out of the first series of meetings that happened out of the suggestion, one of the men who worked in the mailroom at Boardroom Inc. coming up with an improvement idea, he noticed that the books shipped at a particular mail rate, and if they were to take like an eighth of an inch off the height of the book, they shipped at a different mail rate.
Wow. Love
the
that.
diff the difference was so imperceptible. It was almost, if you put the books side by side, you barely saw the difference, but it saved over $200,000 a year in shipping.
Yes.
And no one else would have come up with that except for
Yeah.
somebody who worked in the mailroom.
Yeah. I love those kind of stories because it just speaks to the ingenuity that different expertise or different eyeballs, I will say,
Mhm.
bring to the table, and how important all of the stakeholders need to be to create something, a solution that
Mhm.
is super viable and potentially very cost effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And the importance of creating an environment that you appreciate and welcome.
Yeah.
You know, and again, as you said, it sometimes some of them are crazy off the wall.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't even make sense. But if you're not inviting the crazy off the wall, you won't get the saving hundreds of thousands of dollars on your ship
Yeah.
rate.
Well, and Patty, you know, you talk about the environment, the climate. There is something that I work in called creative climate. And
Mm.
it actually, you have to generate it. It doesn't often just happen. That's
Mhm.
why, as a facilitator, that's one of the things I do with my larger engagements is that I create a room that has a creative climate to allow that thinking to emerge for people have to feel safe to be creative.
Yes. Yes.
And so,
Safe, trusted,
yep,
valued,
yes,
respected.
correct.
Yes. Your culture.
Yes, all the things you would hope human beings would do with each other,
Yes. Oh,
right?
very good. Very good. All right. So we've done, stage one is clarify, stage two is ideation. What's stage three?
Oh, the one that I have found to be the hardest for almost everybody I work with, and that's the developer stage,
Mm.
developing the idea. And some of your entrepreneurs already, they may feel a dead weight around their legs when just talking about that, because it is going through the nitty gritty of the idea. And there's a profile I use to understand people's creative process. And always, this is the lowest profile point for most people. And rarely do you find pure developers. It is a project manager role for all intents and purposes. And to be able to handle that amount of detail can be nauseating. And I find developing challenging myself. Self-confession here. And it's a lot of rigor. So, but it is critical because it's almost like the prototyping stage through an innovation process, right? You've got to be able to test and understand what works and doesn't work. And this is where developing is where fail fast occurs. So everyone talks about fail fast and, people are quaking in their boots. It's in this stage, but the failure has to then lead to learning, or it actually is good old fashioned failure, right? So this is where you want to put in cycles of developing your ideas and finding out what works, what doesn't work, how to iterate, evolve. And those are particular muscles, similarly to the difference between a marathoner and a sprinter. They both run, but they work completely differently. And so being able to have people on your team who can develop is really important. And a lot of my entrepreneurs complain about not having these people on their teams. And it's not really, unfortunately, valued. I mean, if you think about, I remember coming out of consumer packaged goods, and then in the late 1990s, early 2000s, a lot of middle management was cut out. A lot of those people were developing ideas. Suddenly they're gone. Like, who's developing those ideas now?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's definitely an undervalued. Dan Sullivan at Strategic Coach has actually broken down. For him, the project manager role broke into an innovation manager, which is someone who can take an idea and make it real.
Yes.
And a process manager, who is somebody who, once it's made real, can make it recur. And
Love
again,
that. Yeah.
important skill sets.
Yeah.
None of them are my role.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So this is where,
Yeah.
this is why it's so important to harness your team. And if you don't have the team, if you don't have enough different complements, beg, borrow, and steal.
Sure. Yeah.
We're in such a unique period of time right now that we can access resources. My team's virtual.
Sure.
And so, if I needed to bring someone else on, I would look for specifically what I was looking for. And can I even just bring them in for a project?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely critical stage. And a lot of money can get wasted here if this isn't done
Yes.
well, right?
Yes.
With some focus.
Yes.
So that is the third and important stage of the creative process.
Great. So that's stage one, clarifying, stage two, ideation, stage three, developer. What is stage four?
The implementer.
Aha.
The just do it person. And you can often read someone who's an implementer based on their energy. So I am a natural implementer, although because I've had a lot of training when I'm facilitating, I can play across all the profiles. But left to my own devices, I'm like, let's get going. Let's get into action, which you can see how important that is. Like we
Yes.
need to get into action. But again, if you don't have those other stages checked off well, you might be getting into action around all the wrong things, which goes back to the way we started this conversation around the pandemic and what are you going to get into action around?
Yes.
Like if you're taking action down the wrong tunnel, not great. A lot of wasted resources could go down there. And if you're thrown to action, you might feel overwhelmed about how do I get into action? So as an entrepreneur now, you probably are, if you've had overwhelm, it's because you may be predisposed to being more of an implementer and you're like, where do I begin? As opposed to, oh, where do I begin? Right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
Very good.
super important, important part of your creative process. And, it's the engine of making things happen.
Yes. And we had a conversation leading up to today, and you said something I thought that was really interesting. I'd like to bring in, because this is where right now we're literally, right now we're coming out of lockdown through most of North America, and we're trying to figure out our way forward. And you made a comment because the creative process allows you to create something for the future that's very different from what you've done in the past. And we have an opportunity right now because the creative process means you're looking for a solution to a problem.
Yes.
Absolutely everybody right now recognizes a problem.
Yes. Yeah.
So do you want to talk a little bit about, what the opportunity is right now?
Yes, I think that's really important. Most times if you ask people, they can kind of articulate their problem, but is it root cause? And I think what you're finding now is people are able to articulate their problems much more vividly than they have in the past. And you want to go deep. So you never just want to ask one question and go one and done. You want to keep going deeper and deeper to really understand and be able to empathize to understand the core root of the problem. So when you got that, you might find there a sum of problems that put together become the innovation. It's like the system of putting it all together becomes a solution that differentiates you from others. And there might be elements of how you're currently doing business that allow you to manifest that new idea going forward. So spending time and there is, as entrepreneurs, we can't spend money at McKinsey or Boston Consulting Group or Deloitte, but I got to tell you, they're publishing reports like crazy. So all the content and all the research studies that would cost thousands and thousands of dollars for us to instigate are all going out there in the world right now. So you can spend some time looking and seeing what's going on around the world. Secondly, I have noticed a shift, Patty, and I don't know if you've noticed this too, but people are really, really open to sharing these days. Like I'd say that's shifted in the last 3-4 years where we're less like, this is my idea and my secret process and I'm not going to share. People are like, go ahead, learn from me. So we're just in this really wide open world of people being collaborative and all over the world are doing, people are doing that. So your opportunity to go out there is to just listen and learn. And you can do that at speed. It doesn't take long. And then I think one of the points that, when you start to get excited, that rumble in your tummy again, that's going to be, a leading indicator for you. It's time to get into action.
It's good. So you just gave, I thought, some great action steps. If someone is anxious right now, what would you recommend? What would be your first recommendation? If someone right now is kind of anxious, they're tight right now, what to do with their business, responsibility for their team, what would be your first recommendation?
If they are currently in a situation where they have almost no revenue just because of the reality of what we're in, and some businesses, that's just the way it is. If you're a theater company right now, for example, however, don't get frozen, right? You've got to start to look out for possibility because when a future gets shut down, it can shut us down, right? So you've got to create new possibilities for the future to get excited about. So as a first step, it might even just be getting people around you, asking for people to come together and help you almost reignite your imagination and your dreaming capacity. And if you can then tap into that energy, then you can start to walk back and do some checking in and just get people on Zoom who you want to talk to and bounce your ideas off of them and have them really grill you on that, and something could emerge. So if you're stuck, I'd say get into communication and start creating possibilities for a new future, no matter what business you're in. I think that would be a really important first step.
That's excellent. And Marisha, first of all, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being on this Up Solutions Facebook group and sharing your, I thought you shared some particularly valuable nuggets for engaging and appreciating our own creativity and engaging the creativity of our team and others.
Yes.
None of us can do this alone. And as you said, we're much more willing to share. So let's tap into that. So I greatly appreciate it. Where can people find out more about you?
Yes, there are two ways. One, if you're an entrepreneur and you would like to listen to my podcast, one of which includes Patty, you can go to entrepreneursvelocity.com. And you can get a bunch of resources there, free access. And then my other business is Velocity Partnership, which is where you'd find more of my one-on-one business coaching and the other work I do. And you can get all that. And that's probably the two best places. Or connect with me on LinkedIn. You know, again, like yourself, Patty, we're very collaborative people. We love hearing from people who are making a difference in the world through their entrepreneurial capacity.
Absolutely. And for everyone going through this Facebook interview, we'll post Marisha's websites in the comments. And Marisha, thank you so much. To everyone out there, have a great week. This is, again, let's harness the opportunity, support each other. And our opportunity, I really, truly believe, is as entrepreneurs, we have the opportunity to pivot, reinvent, reposition, and lead our communities out of this. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Patty. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Marisha.